This is episode 15 in our podcast series on the thought of Reb Avrohom Elya Kaplan in Pikvas Ayira, and up to one of his more famous pieces, Al Herzl, on page Pei Hey in Pikvas Ayira. And here too, as in the previous piece, which we said is prefatory to this piece, this is a speech which was given at the Asifa in Telz in 1919. One would have loved to have been at that Asifa. And this is a long piece. It's going to take us a while to go through it. And obviously it reflects Reb Avrohom Elya's thought in 1919. And I say that because we're going to also have to figure out whether what Reb Avrohom Elya would have said in 1919, he would have said in 1949, he would have said in 2019. Okay, that's something which remains to be seen. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. Says the Reb Avrohom Elya, who lolim dona Taras Moshe. Herzl not teaches the Torah Moshe Rabbeinu. Who lolim dona halacha al agadi, not teaches halacha and agadata. Who lolim dona chachma so musar yadus. He didn't teach us the Wissenschaft des Judentum. He didn't teach us the chachma of Judaism, musar yadus, or ethics of Judaism. He never was not taught any of these things. He was an assimilated Jew from Vienna. Who's got a besriva. He grew up in an environment in which none of these to be found. But he taught us to say two words: and opportunities and occasions, asher ad lo, that until him, lo asnu, we didn't dare, and we're not able to say them in those at those opportunities, in those occasions. Ivri anochi, I'm a Hebrew. It's true, in the Beis Medrash you always had this identity. Even in Golus, in the Beis Medrash, we had our Jewish identity, although we didn't have to say it outright. Our conduct was Ivri Anochi. We'd even write and read this in all of our books and all of our essays. In all of our of our papers and all of our journals. We could pronounce us a nation any place you wanted, but not in one place. In that place in which they are represented with greater strength, all the nations' world. In the worldwide, it's hard to translate medinios, diplomacy, politics, in the worldwide stage of the nations of the world as nations. There, we are like a aimlessly wandering flock. That's how they regarded us. The wandering Jew. Like a certain Telzer, not one of our favorite Telzers, said. He's quoting Yudah Leib Gordon, who was one of the radical freethinkers of the time. Lo Am, not a nation. Lo Edah, not a congregation. Kim Eder, but a flock. And not like those sheep who are petted and who are fattened. We're like those type of sheep. But like, in other words, not like the ones who are treated here in Fatim. I don't think he means specifically Fatim for Shechita, because that's what he's about to say, but he means not like those who are treated nicely and kindly. But like those who are either shorn or are brought to be slaughtered. Did it happen any time that a Jew would stand before a European governor, governing authority. V'al the question, miato, who are you? Yaneh, b'shtei milim, he's going to answer with 2 words of too low. No more, Ivri Anochi, I'm a Hebrew. Hini Yehudi, I'm a Jew. Lo kol tosefes, without any additional qualification. Lo kol perush mitzal, without any peripheral interpretation. Yehudi, he would answer, I'm a Jew, I'm Germani, but also German. Yehudi, I'm Sarfati, a Jew, but also French. Yehudi, a Jew, agam Angli, but also English. V'chuli v'chuli. Achein hirbu lichtov azos. It's true. People have wrote a lot about being just an Ivri. People aroused the national spirit. They taught us to recognize ourselves. Kachasu Moshe Hess, Dr. Pinsker, all these Zionist figures which are forgotten by history. But in truth, but there was no chiddush in that internally. Lakir es atzmeinu, to recognize ourselves. Lamin ba'atzmeinu, to believe in ourselves. V'lichios beinenu lebein atzmeinu, as live among ourselves. Chai Yehudi, the life of a Jew. Limdunu b'yes ha'amakah, and they taught, those are Zionist leaders, but they taught with greater depth. Yes, above you, and with more heart. All the greats of our Torah. Gonenu, our geniuses. Rosheshu Vasenu. Yeah, I think it means Gonenu here, like the Goinim, or the leaders of the yeshivas at the time. The Goinim. Rosheshu was saying the heads of our yeshivas called over Torah in every generation. Limdun, they taught us ladas lachshov azos, to know and to think about this. They also taught us to speak about this in whispers. Beinenu lebein atzmeinu, among ourselves. Af echad ad Herzl, but nobody until Herzl taught us to go out explicitly to worldwide diplomacy. Let's call it translate. To that worldwide diplomacy, which serves as a thinking heart, where things are calculated in the world. It's interesting because now we're talking about perhaps the UN, perhaps a couple of years later we'll talk about League of Nations as a specific place. But now he's talking about the world diplomacy is not a physical place, but it is a very, very important place in terms of the reckoning of national and the universal assessment of peoples and their aspirations. So worldwide diplomacy is like a place, as far as Reb Avrohom Elya is concerned. So we didn't go. The place where they come all the brains, we call regoshos, and all the emotions, of all nations. But and they demonstrate to publicly, to everybody's eye, Bekoram, with a loud voice, which is explicit and clear, as we shall say, their demands, from humanity in general, as she was saying, their ambitions, and their aspirations, their goals, and together with that, their plans, how they're going to work, get with their ambitions, and to their goals. L'sham, to their based in Ashalamim, to the based into the court Ashalamim, which the nation, and again they think about the International Criminal Court, the National Court of Justice, which was causing, as we speak, trouble for Am Yisrael. We're talking about a virtual court here. Reb Avrohom Elya not have the term virtuali at his disposal, but they're talking about the virtual place of worldwide diplomacy, the virtual place of the based in Shalamim. Also mishpa based on shalom kulo, to that court which is from the entire world. The first one who got there was Herzl. He said explicitly and out of freedom. Local without difficulty. Local mamatim is our artistim, and without any artistic efforts. Interesting way of putting it. Ivri Anochi. Before we go on, because it's fascinating, actually, in the next part as well. what Reb Avrohom Elya has not mentioned so far, he doesn't mention for a while, is Eretz Yisrael. It's based out of Rianochi, but not about Eretz Yisrael. And even the next line, where he does mention indirectly, he doesn't get right to the point. I think it's deliberate. Let's see. So he says, furthermore, I was stolen from the land of the Hebrews. Here I also did nothing. Because they put me in jail. So of course what Yosef HaTzadik says when he's presented to Paro. The Jewish nation is a nation unto itself. Like all the nations of the world. It's unique in its character. Much more than other nations. And his unique power of life, to live like a unified and unique nation, which is not allowed in any way to be absorbed. And I think the next word is paronim. The word paro, like little pharaohs. There are other possibilities what it might mean, but I think that's probably what it means here. He wants to say about Joseph's meeting with Paro, so I think it's about paronim. Doesn't allow it to be digested. Doesn't allow it to pass and be negated from the world. Even when they're crushed like a worm. Even when we're crushed like a worm. Generation after generation, hundreds of years. The worm of Yaakov always squirms out from underneath the tyrannical crushings. The legacy of Holodarkon goes further on its way. The next two words are fascinating also. B'Shem Hashem. It goes on its way in the name of God. Now, Herzl did not come in the name of God. Herzl came in the name of nationalism, in the name of world Jewry, not in the name of God. Reb Avrohom Elya here is putting in a message, which is very distinct from the message which Herzl was making, even though we're talking about what Herzl's accomplishments are. As those he's being Rishon of Dr. Herzl. So this phenomenon was explained for the first time by Dr. Herzl. Lo, not to us, but rather the entire world. To all the powerful forces in this world. L'shem matar zu, for this purpose. L'shem achraz zu baznei for this pronouncement in the ears of the world. Shemesh lo ha-Congress. The Zionist Congress serves the purpose. Now Reb Avrohom Elya makes a very powerful point here. Sorry about a couple of phone calls that just came in. So let me go back a line here. L'shem achrazazu b'aznei olam, for make this pronouncement in the ears of the world. Shemesh lo Congress. The Zionist Congress serve this purpose. Una ma pashut hu davar zeh shmo Congress. See how simple a thing is. Something which called the Congress. To call together Congress. Call few Jews together, right? Yet how much greatness is necessary in order to create it. Why did this cross anybody's mind? After Herzl. So Herzl came along. We to call and gather Jewish representatives in the four corners of the world, to present the question, what's with us? What's our place in this world? What are we supposed to have to do? It would seem to be a simple matter. Why don't we do it until Herzl? Do you know why? I'll answer you with a question, just like any Jew does. When hundreds of prisoners are found in an internment camp, so Vlintos and they're undergoing difficulties. Why do they call a gathering amongst themselves to take counsel on their bitter destiny? Because they think in their hearts, what good is it going to do for us to gather together? Do we have control over ourselves? We're prisoners. This was the Jewish nation thought in all the years of its golus. Do we control ourselves? We're prisoners here in golus. What What is good for us to gather and take counsel? As Bela Peta Herzl. So Herzl came over to him, Kara, he called figuratively. Asirim Tzu, prisoners, go out. Asher B'choshech, those who were in darkness, Higalu, experience the revelation. Heichon Kavlechem, where are your cables? Where are your chains? Your chains have been rusted for hundreds of years. He knew B'yadchem, wave with your hands, but Pono, they'll fall. Also your cables will be opened up. The nation of Nebuchadnezzar which shackled you, let's say, a better word. The nation of Titus, which put you into ghettos. The nation of Innocent the Third. Will put the yellow badge of shame on your clothing. Of the Kfar Shultonam, they lost their governance. Habilti Mugbal, their unlimited governance, al olam on the world. Ki meisu kol nashim vakshim es nafshecha. Hashem said to Moshe, what I call correctly, right? All the people who quest your soul have died. And you're still lying in the cradle of your golus. Crib of your golus, perhaps. Which restrains you there for hundreds of years. And is also moving now. From the residual energy of those who pushed it around back then. And it doesn't want to stop moving. Put your hand on it and it'll stand. Want this, and it won't be a dream. And finally you're going to get off of it. And you'll find firm ground underneath your feet. And afterwards, when you'll be released from your habit, to be in your own eyes like a worm, which is obviously going to be crushed, whether it avoids it or not, it's going to be crushed. You'll only have to be concerned with this. How will it continue its existence? Somehow, when the sense of self as a nation will no longer be effective inside, towards yourself, that will give you the attention you need and the perspective you need not to be crushed, a defensive position, but also towards the outside. To not to avoid the blow, but to arrest those who are trying to make the blows fall upon you. Then will come the power, Lorim Kol, lift up a voice, not to bring upon us the mercy and kindness of the nations of the world at their mercy. Shivyon Zchus, the Zchuyos, which will give us equal rights. Which will permit us to live in this world. Lo Shom Klau Luklau, not there altogether. Ki b'makom acher legamrei, but in another place altogether. Bifnei midas hadin shelo umos, in front of the midas hadin, the letter of the law of the nations of the world. Bebeis HaMishpat, in the court of justice. Bindinos, and this obviously is the virtual court, not necessarily literal court, but point is to get what actually is not ours by rachamim, but by din. B'mdina Islamis in the worldwide diplomacy, b'mokom bo yitzar Am Yisrael k'Am Yisrael, in a place where the Jewish nation will strive like the Jewish nation. L'tavtid bois chiyosav al cherusov al beso, to demand its rights on its freedom and on its house. Now again, Eretz Yisrael is implicit here, but much more explicit is the idea of Judaism as a nation, and not as a nation which is subservient, and a nation which is shackled, and a nation which is under restraint. Says Reb Avrohom Elya, we didn't even realize that much of that restraint was self-imposed, that we have the capacity to organize and be meaningful and significant and take, so to speak, the offensive. Not be offensive, take the offensive. In other words, Herzl gave Jews a certain degree of self-confidence and a degree of boldness which did not exist previously. Why it didn't exist? Even when there were no guards past the prison gates, the prisoners were afraid to flee. They shackled themselves. I'm not sure how long in history that was true. Perhaps since the mid-1800s. Not very long. Rabbi is saying by the time Herzl appears on the scene in the late 1800s, this is true. Time was ripe. There was this idea in the world of self-determination, not just for Jews, but it's something which had not yet reached the Jews, and Herzl was the one who used self-determination, national identity, as something which now which we should extend to ourselves, something which we can internalize and exploit. Again, Eretz Yisrael is mentioned till now only very obliquely. Mitzayah Davar, it makes us sad. It's because of English. Herzl did not have the opportunity to appear in such of an actual court, which only opened out, and I assume is referring to League of Nations, after the Great War, 15 years after his untimely death. But that which he was not able to do on his own, he made us on. He taught us to be capable of doing so, and do this when necessary. If our messengers now in Paris, so some meeting in Versailles, at the time of negotiation of all the League of Nations and the mandate and all those things were taking place, now say that which is clear and obvious to all of us, that Am Yisrael demands lo shivlo as Eretz Yisrael to return to it Eretz Yisrael. We finally got there. Asher lo chadla milios shelo, which never ceased being ours, mishum she'i hatzedek, on account of the injustice. Sheyosek zula meito nimshach 1800 shana, that because the injustice of it being sown for us lasted 1800 years, v'lo kama milshim, not just several hundred years. Kfish matzav advarim, which is normally the case, by other nations have been robbed their nations, like I assume he's referring to people of Eastern Europe, and there are various nations which appeared after World War I, after having been suppressed for several hundred years. And if this approach of thoughts, literally, which not very long ago, Herzl's first steps took place in the 1890s and early 1900s. Was at the time only a dream, utopia. Hukarata based on Sheminas Olamis is now recognized in the court of worldwide diplomacy. Aide Rob Gedolei Medina Eolam, by a majority of the great diplomats of the world, the great statesmen of the world. Kanacha Chukis Realis, as a legal and realistic claim, premise. Nachazu Buarabi Feirush, and this premise has been explicitly stated because in Turkey, in the peace treaty with Turkey. Eretz Yisrael Musheves, the land of Israel is returned, not given as a gift of grace. Musheves Lameinu, but is restored to our nation. Kavidosh Nevdalo, like in the lost object, we return to it. L'shem Bais Lumi, purpose of a national homeland. Im Kral Kol B'Yameinu, Le'nei of all this happened in our day into our eyes. V'Yodanu Be'ez Hashem knows God's help. La Los Es In Yonenu Hakoli Darga Kazu, and we know with God's help to uplift our general matters. In other words, our agenda to this level. Well, were Luleilim Dan Limdunu Herzl. Had Herzl not taught us his approach in his thoughts, all of us that which happening to us, to the nation of Israel now, in a natural way after World War I. Blow flows without miracles and wonders, at least not apparent ones. Loya Kore would not have happened. Herzl was a necessary precondition to this. Think big. Do we not have, for example, I'm not familiar with this, but there was some peace congress in Berlin. They come several decades earlier. Great Jews, like they were now in the Versailles peace treaty negotiations. There also was there was a greater person than them at the time in stature and diplomacy. There also was there somebody named Binyamin. Who was able to be equal in his talents, diplomatic talents, and his crafts, his statecraft. The Binyamin Herzl, equal in stature, Binyamin Herzl, like Amal Loslov, perhaps even superior. Zeh Binyamin D'Israeli, Benjamin D'Israeli, the British Prime Minister. Hashemim Atem, do you hear? Shemi Vilumim with Siyame Kamo, extraordinarily beautiful, outstanding Jewish national name. Mashu Semi Theodor Herzl, a better name than Theodor Herzl. Binyamin HaYisraeli, Binyamin the Israelite. Malanot, what else do we need it? What else do we need? But he had a little additional aspect to this Jewish name. Lord Beaconsfield. We have a minister by Anglia, and he was a prime minister in England. And he was also shmated, so I'm not sure exactly what the comparison is. True, he retained a superficial identity as a Jew, but he converted to Christianity. But all right. He had great influence in the court of worldwide diplomacy. And evidently he had his activity for Israel at that peace congress. So I said, was no more, no less than a known promise written on paper from the very merciful Romanian government about the rights of Jews. When Romania did not fulfill his promise, the Israeli didn't say one word. Was he not a nationalist Jew? No. He understood and sensed the ambitions, freedom of the Jews like nobody else. He created a wonderful composition, in which he wrote a novel, I think it was actually, in which he poetically sings with such great warmth and emotional warmth as the song of the Jewish movement of freedom, which ceased too soon, before its time, which arose during the 13th century. David al-Roi, who was one of our abortive Mashiachim. So he knew, he wrote a novel about him. But what was the shortcoming of Rabbi saying? Together with others, the great of his nation, and together with all the massive nations which had been gathered together at this Congress. Kasher Herzl, like the l'chol pachos, the very least, cherus la'Yehudim u'vana tarbuti, freedom for Jews in culture, in cultural aspects, charatzos gulasam, in all the nations of their exile. Mein chus la'bakan, what was the point of weakness here? Because la'bra hi bezeh shekvar amarti v'chila. His point of weakness was that I already said. So that he was revealed in all of his greatness and all of his lofty stature. Lo b'shma now with his personal name, Binyamin the Israeli. And with those but with the addition to his name, Lord Beaconsfield. A minister Angli, the English minister, the Loman Higa Yudim, and not the leader of the Jews. Man Yudov for the Jews, he just tossed a coin which rung hollow to the tzedakah pushka which they had. After a promise to Romania to do kindness. With this he fulfilled his obligation. Binyamin Israeli Amiti, so who was the Jew again? I'm not sure the marshal was great marshal because the Israeli was not ultimately Jewish. But, I mean, he was ultimately Jewish, but not situationally Jewish. But for this we needed, it was Binyamin Israeli Amiti, the true Binyamin Israeli, the true Israelite Binyamin Herzl. He taught us what we know today. And again, he was a assimilated Jew, and he wasn't doing Shem Hashem. But he taught us this lesson, that the lesson relates to Eretz Yisrael, but the lesson is a lesson in and of itself. Will come out to stand with pride and stature, kufa, with straight stature, before the court of world diplomacy. As members of the Jewish nation, Hadorshim, which demand Lashiv Lahem is based on Mayudi, which demand the return of the Jewish homeland. V'amukarim who should be recognized as such. After years of toil, extended years of toil from our side, to prove clearly by congresses, by organizing the masses, by constant work to settle the land of Israel, MS, the truth, and the reality, in our demand. Akidei Chadira, to the point that it penetrated, Bishtatus, and took control of hearts, Valmochos, and of minds, Halam Agdov, the great world, beyond the Jewish world. Im Yochonu Zos Be'ezer Hashem, if we were able to do this with God's help, today, 15 years later, his Mishum should be Kanra Be'etzim Froshel Herzl. That because we visited Herzl school, Yadana Malim Mod Sham, and we knew what to learn there. But the question still is possible to be presented. Dainu, meaning, Hu Haya Mashaya. He was what he was. Hu Hara Derech, he showed a way. But we ask him, is there not some other way to be shown to the Jewish nation, which it should seize on? Remember, we said that Herzl didn't say it about Shem Hashem. So is there not a more true and tovoyos and better derech than Herzl's derech? Or with more clear, in clear words, more with Haim Aleinu is Dakei Davka Letzionus. They have to specifically use Zionism in order to resolve the question of the Jews. Or should we have learned is it better for us to stand ourselves without Zionism? By finding a resolution with some other universal idea. As they might say one side. So without any universal idea. Like our forefathers did till now. Just with our internal values and our internal definitions. And we were able to survive nevertheless. So we should look for some other universal idea, some other ism, or should we look for no isms? Why Zionism? Okay, we learned from Herzl to be a nation. Now what? And we'll stop here for today. and this is where we're about halfway through, a little more than halfway through the Mimer, and we remain with the question: why Zionism? Something other than Zionism?